And there was also a lot of
initiative.
incentive for you because you're like, I wonder, you asked if you could be collared. I was like, do you think this is a possibility that we could have? And I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, yes, if you jump through these 10 hoops
Yes,
that
you
are going
did
to
make me jump.
terrify you. Tell the audience, what did you have to do to get the esteemed, rare honor of being collared by me, girl?
It is a very rare honor. I feel it's very exclusive club.
Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of Soul Kink Therapy. My name is Emily Letts. I am a therapeutic dominatrix based in Boulder, Colorado. And today I am so pleased, so deeply pleased to introduce you all to the glorious girl. Girl is my, honest to God, collared submissive. We have been working together. We've been working together, her as my client, for over the course of 3 years total. And we've been working together 2 years in session. I wanted to bring Girl on today to speak about her very profound journey in this work using conscious kink. As a trans woman, as a woman with mental health issues she's dealt with in the past, eating disorders, and where she is today, because it is a true motherfucking Cinderella story. I'm so proud of her, and I'm so pleased, girl, to have you on the show.
Thank you, mistress. It's an honor to be on. So I can't wait to talk. So
Yeah, wonderful. So, girl, tell me, let's just start. Give me a little synopsis. Where were you 3 years ago?
well, 3 years ago I was in a I guess you could say I was technically okay. I mean, I wasn't at risk of dying or anything like in the past, so I mean that was okay. But
Helpful. Helpful.
yeah, but my soul was probably not okay. I was really wanting connection. I was really, really wanting. I was in a place where I just, I wanted, you know, connection in form of friendship, in form of romantic connection, in form of just, you know, I don't know. The after post pandemic, it was very isolating during the pandemic, and
Yeah.
also because of lots of other things in my story. But by this point, I was over the hump with those things. It was just now I was trying to take this new journey of like, how do I just form more connection that I want instead of connection that just kind of happens to me, you know?
Hmm.
And so I literally typed into Google Boulder Dominatrix and there you were.
First of all, that's awesome. Second of all, I am curious what made you, yeah, so you have a history of, just to give people like a little smattering of the things that you've gone through, and you have a history of eating disorders, right?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. So, yeah, my story of getting to where I am now is a little wild. You know, Starting out was that I, have had gender dysphoria for a very long time.
Hmm.
I knew since I was very young that there was something incongruent about my gender identity and, the gender that I was assigned at birth and everything. And so that caused a lot of issues growing up. I also was diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder
Hmm.
that affects all of my joints, and caused a lot of dislocations and everything, led to all the lung collapses that I had, which
So that's right,
were
people. She said lung collapses. Imagine yourself hanging out and all of a sudden your lung collapses.
yeah, it's not fun, I can say
Mhm.
that much. They have to shove a bunch of tubes in you and not in the fun way. And, it's very traumatic and it's very it definitely affected me a lot, you know? It was right when I was turning 18, my early 20s. I mean, it set me back with lots of medical debt. Which prevented me from seeking connection in a whole different way because
Hmm.
of other things. But like, it just basically, um, it, the lung collapses definitely gave me a lot of medical traumas and things like that I dealt with for a while. Plus, not the matter of just recovering from all of it and, learning how to like breathe again and stuff.
Well,
So that was that. And then also there was the opiate addiction that stemmed from that problem.
oh my
Um,
gosh.
which because of all the surgeries I had, there was the opiate addiction, overcame that. Then there was the eating disorder stuff that I started to deal with. And all of these things, like the eating disorder was also from when I was a teenager on, but I just didn't get to dealing with it until I solved a lot of these other problems in my
Hmm.
life. And then after eating disorder treatment, I that's when I finally that then like pandemic time hit and that really sucked. But then right after that, that's when I kind of was like, okay, I've been through all of this. My body is in a place where I'm like technically healthy, but I need to learn how to exist inside of it again and like learn
Hmm.
how. So it's not even just when I say connection and relationship with other people, it's also with my own body,
Mm.
trying to rebuild that
Mm.
relationship as
Mm.
well.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
Um,
Mm. Just doing a
so
little happy dance over here to hear you say that. No big deal. Don't
well, I
mind
mean,
me.
a lot of the things were like, and I mean, as you can attest, were like I had gotten so used to not living in my body, living in my brain, because my body felt very unsafe. It was a
Yeah.
place where I had previously had lots of physical pain from Ehlers-Danlos and the lung stuff, and then the eating disorder stuff, and like a lot of sensations were so uncomfortable for me, and like that
And then
made me.
and also your
Mm,
gender not matching how you feel.
yes, yes, all of it combined just made me not want to exist
Yeah.
in my body, and for a
Yeah.
while, I really tried to exist in my head only, like
Yeah.
just up here, and that worked. But like it wasn't leading me down a path where that was congruent with the values that I was seeking in that point in my life. And
Hmm.
so when I looked at what my values were at that point, it was like, oh, connection. That's one of my huge values. And so,
Hmm.
when I realized though that if I want a connection with other people, I probably had to work on that connection with myself. And, yeah, that's what kind of led me to start working, with you and everything just because I was like, you know, I yeah, it felt like a right move because I was just like, "Okay, this will help me practice being in my body," like,
Hmm.
and hopefully it can be in, like, a safe space, which you definitely provided, obviously, so,
Like,
yeah.
ladies and gentlemen, whoever's listening, I just wanted like thank you for going through all of that because I just wanted to give you her like resume of like oppression Olympics. You have
Uh,
experience because I think you at least get like a silver medal when it comes to the oppression Olympics in those kind of ways.
I
Because
mean,
you
I'd
have
rather not be a competitor in the Oppression Olympics,
I'm sorry you
but
won. Like you won. Like, you had so
yeah.
much, right? And then so it's interesting, what caused you to reach out to like, why dominatrix? I don't think I ever know this.
Well, so I was looking at the kinds of things that really worked for me, and I went into eating disorder treatment for, intensive care and things, and in those, it was a lot of intense therapy and things, and, I learned a lot about myself and that therapeutic spaces could do things. I
Hmm.
also knew that, like, I wanted, you know, to I at the time, I was really feeling like I wanted, like, physical connection, like touch and things like
Touch.
that.
Yeah.
That was the main thing that I was really feeling like I wanted. And so I think that, like, for me, I kinda just Googled, like I said, dominatrix area, see what popped up just because I was curious. And you popped up and it was all about, therapeutic kink and things like that. And that really got my attention because I was like, I'm pretty good at therapy. I don't wanna brag, but I've been in a lot of therapy, so, like, I'm pretty good at that. But,
Yeah.
like, that could be a very interesting way because, like, it does, it's not just like a thing where I'm, meeting with someone once a week and we're talking about
Yeah.
problems, and that was the thing in treatment. Like there was a lot of active work in treatment that I did. And so when I saw that, I think what attracted me to a dominatrix in the first place was like, I want to do active work. I don't want to just
Yeah.
kind of do the passive work about, I mean, that's very important. And I still do talk to my based therapists and everything.
Yeah.
And, it's really helpful to process sometimes sessions and emotions and things. But like, I was really looking for practice. And
Mm.
so
Like
my original
physical
plan, yeah.
connection, touch, based practices. Yeah.
And I also think that for me, it felt safer to go to a dominatrix because I think for me, there's a big thing about communication. And I've never
Mm.
gone into therapy without having a lot of communication. And not that I intended this to be therapy in the beginning, I guess. When I saw your page, yes, I did. But like when I searched dominatrix, it wasn't
Mhm.
intended. It was more of like, oh, I'm going to work with this person and try and get touch and I'm going to process it with my therapist. Like,
Yeah.
we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And so like, um, I at the time, yeah, I was just like, I need to do active work and I need to figure out how. And I think that the working with a dominatrix, developing a spoken contract and like, because I was trusting that who I would be working with would be a professional and that they would go through the steps. Of like negotiating and also like, I think for me, it felt safer because there was a form of payment
Yeah.
because it's like there's a service that is provided and there's an agreement beforehand of what service is being provided and what's going to be happening. And that, for me as a neurodivergent person, feels very safe. And so,
Mhm.
like, I feel like, oh, by me engaging in this, by giving you money and you doing this, it provides a safe space for me to be like, okay, like everything's negotiated, everyone's okay with what's going to happen here. This is like a job, and like it feels safer, I guess, in my
Yeah.
my mind about like, and I think that's just because I didn't really understand that like you could have negotiations and things outside of those kinds of relationships. So I was just like, I mean, that was a foreign concept, but I was like, no, if I'm engaging in this, it's definitely going to be, hopefully, what I want, and,
Yeah.
yeah, so there was a lot of things I think that made it feel safe. It was just like, I, yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I always say that it's like money is a permissioning tool. Like that's why hiring a practitioner, hiring a dominatrix, hiring a sex surrogate, like whatever it is, money is a
Mhm.
permissioning tool, and so that's why it's one of the most sacred and oldest professions there are, because this is a part of all of our humanity, and yet oftentimes we don't get exposed to how to do it with integrity
Mhm.
in a safe holding pattern. So
Yeah.
I'm all about that. So when you first came in to work with me, I remember, I mean, why I love talking about your story is because it's just like a night and day difference to where you are. I remember when you first started came working with me, like you were so apologetic for even existing, for even breathing. And then when we started working, I remember like when I touched you for the first time, even just like a graze of the skin, you started crying and shaking because you hadn't been touched in like uh, an absurd amount of time. Do you even remember that?
I mean, I do, yeah. It is kind of a night and day difference, like, it's very surprising, when I look at myself today
Like
comparatively.
today?
Like, yeah, I mean,
For those of
like,
you
yeah.
who are just listening on audio, this lady in front of me looks like an 80s supermodel. She's got this gorgeous hair. She's got like gorgeous red lipstick on. She looks fantastic.
Thank you, mistress, I very much appreciate it. It's, well, like, for example, when like you said, when I started working with you, it was very much like, "Oh, I am," um I was, like, apologetic. I mean, even though we had established that, like I said, the money, I felt like at the beginning gave me permission to be like,
Right.
"Okay, this is okay." I still felt so bad that you had to touch me because I was just like, "No one should have to touch me. I am the grossest thing on
Oh,
the planet," you know? And again, not in like a
oh,
fun, derogatory way, in a very mean, demeaning way of my internal voices that were saying that, of like, you know, and then it got kind of, it did kind of go the other way of like, well, they're only doing it because, my brain tried to, as I was accepting touch more, my brain really did try and work around those things and come up with new
yeah.
explanations of why it was like
I'm just gonna
bad, you
slow us
know?
down here for a second. Let me just take a
Yes.
breath. Let's just
Mhm.
take a breath with that. Mm. When you said that, ugh, I got hit with a wave of such sadness. Yeah, I did because I remember that, like this feeling of no one should have to touch me. I remember that like deep ache in your body, and I have I mean, I have so much love for you these days, like now, and it's wild to think about how deep your suffering was back 3 years ago. Like, walking around
Yeah.
this world feeling like no one should have to touch me, like it's an obligation.
Yeah. It was
Ugh.
rough. I mean, my self view my view of myself was not high at all, and, I just didn't have a lot of experiences to prove otherwise, and,
Yeah.
even when I did have the rare occasion of, being physical with a partner, it was very much like I could not get myself to believe that they wanted to be there, and, you know, um, it's just like I felt so guilty even then about, like, the same thing, like, "Oh, man, the only reason they're touching me is because I just did something to them, and they're feeling obligated that they have to do it back," and stuff, and, like, it
Ugh.
causes a lot of stress too in relationships because, like, you know and I think that's why I didn't have many is because it was just hard to. I mean, and also, like, when I think about it from my side, like, now it's like, well, I wouldn't want to also date someone like that because, like,
Mm.
it's hard to see someone going through that, and, it's like, you want to date someone who's confident, you want to date someone who's, um, feels good about themselves, and at that point, I just didn't, and
Yeah.
I
It's like you were
was
kind of like a black
definitely.
hole. Do you know what I mean? You were
Yes.
constantly collapsing in on yourself. And so
Yeah.
your even though your coping mechanism was to try to give all the time, to like try to give and give and give, it still felt like you needed people to try to like you needed as much because it was like there was no foundation of love in your own system. So it's like any
Yeah.
love that you got was just like kind of evaporated.
Yeah. And I mean, also the same thing with touch. I mean, when I received touch, I just would in my mind be like, this doesn't really feel that good, or this is overwhelming and I don't like it. But I was so afraid to tell the person that because I was just, the other parts of the other voices in my head were just like, you should feel good that you're being touched at all and
Mhm.
don't complain about it
Mm,
because you you're just lucky that they're touching you, this other
mm.
person is doing something to you, and if you
Take
speak
what
your
I can
mind, they're
get.
definitely gonna leave and just take what you can get, and you'll learn to like it eventually, or it'll be fine, and it's just like, yeah,
Man,
that's
can I
not.
tell you how many people I speak to, clients or, people on social media who live in that purgatory, in that prison of like, I'll take what I can get. Yes, I haven't had sex with my wife for 15 years, but at least I'm not alone. And it's just like, are you fucking crazy? Like, what?
Mhm.
No, no, no. Like, this is
Yeah,
not okay. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you're going through. Like, that mentality is such like a cancer because then it doesn't
yeah,
allow you to voice your needs, and it also doesn't give the person that you're with the opportunity to really be able to be with you.
yeah, it doesn't, and I mean, it's not until recently that I've had, partners that have well, a partner that has wanted to, really and I don't think really wanted to. Some of the other partners may have wanted to, but I'm in a space now where I can let this happen, which is that, they want to pleasure me. They want me to have pleasure, and they want to know what makes me
Mm.
tick, what makes me do things. And, you know, granted, I've never really been asked the question before, but like, it was just nice, that I'm in a space where I could be like, you know what, actually, yeah, I don't like that kind of touch. And I do like this kind of touch. And a lot of that has been figured out working with you, of course. Like, what kinds of touch do I like? And you've provided the space for me to really figure that out of like, oh, I actually
Mm.
do like this, or I don't like this, or I mean, like, I don't like fast touch, but I like slow touch,
Mhm.
I also really like light touch, but hard touch is okay under certain circumstances and contexts, like it just really depends. So it's, having this and being able to share this with a partner, it just really is really nice, and it's
Mm.
also, when I think about it from my side, it's like, yeah, of course I would want to know what my partner wants. Like,
Yeah.
of course I would want to know that, like, because I want to make them happy. And so it's kind of crazy that now I can actually believe that, oh, maybe they want that too for me. So
It's just wild because, audience, you have to understand that I spent, like, a year drilling these messages into this girl's head of,
yeah,
like, it works like this, right?" And she would be like, "I hear what you're saying, but I can't. What
my
and you know what I mean?
the
You just
voices were just
couldn't
not letting me
you
believe it.
couldn't
They were
hear
just,
me.
yeah,
And then when we tried to do something like internal family systems or parts work where we're like, okay,
hmm,
let's actually isolate the creatures, you would get so blended with the creatures that it would completely and utterly shut you down,
yeah, yeah.
and you end up in a fetal position crying because it was they had such a hold on you.
I really listened to their messages a lot, and I think through your work and, I did some internal family systems when I was in eating disorder treatment, because we kind of treat the eating disorder voice as a system. Like, we call it
Mhm.
the eating disorder voice, and we talk about it like it's a separate, like,
Yep.
entity that kind of lives inside of us, despite it being me. And so, like, using parts work in the way that we've used it with you, that I've used it with you, is very interesting, because I understand what those parts want
Huh.
now.
Huh.
And, what they want is safety. They do want the things for me. They want me to be safe. They want me to be, um, they want me to be safe, essentially, and do
Yeah.
engaging in these things, engaging with partners and things, feels very unsafe.
Mhm.
And, these voices don't want me to get hurt. And their way of not
Yeah.
letting me get hurt is by being really mean to me and trying to prevent me from going out in the first place. Because if I don't go out, I can't get hurt. It's kind of it's a catch
Yeah.
22. It's like, yeah, of course, of course I can't get hurt if I don't go out. But
If I live in a vacuum.
by me not going out, I'm also not fulfilling my other values. And
Yeah.
so it's been working with those voices and trying to convince them that, like, hey, other people can actually have my interests at heart too. And, like, yes, maybe I will get hurt. Maybe, like, that's a possibility, but I'd rather get hurt while feeling all this good stuff in the meantime than just not feel any of it at all. So,
I know, yeah, I know, because a lot of our audience members are cross-dressers or, people
mhm,
in, the kink or conscious kink world. But I know with a lot of
yeah,
cross-dressers, there's a similar feeling, which is it's so like the idea of going out in public in their feminine, or the idea of exposing their self as a cross-dresser or as somebody on the in the trans umbrella in one way, shape, or another, gender
mhm,
fluid, whatever it is. And so it's
yeah,
just like, well, it feels so extremely vulnerable to expose myself. So I might as well just hide in this dank, dark closet for my entire life, disassociate
yep,
myself from 50% of my life, and then just hope no one ever finds out. It's
yeah.
like, where, how does, how do we, how does this make sense?
And I mean, I live that with my gender things too.
Yeah.
I very much was very scared to come out publicly, you know? I
Did
when I
you
did, it felt very scary.
did you ever
Mm,
have a moment where you thought this might be a cross? Like, how did you know where you were trans rather than, like,
hmm.
gender fluid or a crossdresser or anything in between? Because it's such a smorgasbord of blurry
Yeah,
lines.
it is. And I mean, I think that identities are very fluid. So,
Mhm.
I think you can be one thing at one point and then, figure things out and become another thing. And maybe you figure more things out and become, things. I mean, things are very fluid. But for me
Mhm.
personally, I very much, um, you know, I knew, I felt like something was incongruent with my body inside.
Mm.
And I did, when I was younger, when I was a kid and stuff, like there was a couple times where I tried on my sister's dresses and things and, to see what that felt like and things. And it felt better. It
Hmm.
was still uncomfortable because I was still very just uncomfortable with my gender in lots of
Yeah.
ways. But like there was a point I think where as a teenager I was just like if I was trying on like one of her dresses, I didn't understand what that meant. And, you know, I ended up doing lots and lots and lots of reading on
Hmm.
things. Just like once I figured out, like the representation when I was a kid of trans people was mostly people saying things about transvestites because that was the word that was used, or
Mhm.
transsexuals. Not the word transgender wasn't very much used. And any famous people who were those things were usually, you know, people to laugh at or,
Right.
like very, very specific in their field, and like sometimes great people, but like not people that I identified with,
Yep.
necessarily. And so, you know, not having the representation of trans people, I think there was a part of me that was like, well, am I just a crossdresser? Am I just doing this for, for fun or what is the drive and motive behind this? And, you know, after learning that like transgender and like people transitioned and there were actual words for these things and there's communities and stuff, like that helped me a lot realize that where I was coming from was not a cross-dressing place. It was
Hmm.
indeed a more gender dysphoria kind of a thing. And for me, that was just because cross-dressing, and I don't think it's like this for everyone, but for
Hmm.
me, it was more of a fetish where, you enjoy wearing women's clothes, and this was for men, uh, people who identified as male. Um, and there's usually some sexual connotation to it. You enjoy, you know, the way it makes you feel and sexually and things like that. Um,
Yeah.
I did feel some of that, but as I started wearing women's clothes more often and things when I started transitioning, those feelings kind of went away, which definitely confirmed for me that it wasn't that it wasn't
Hmm.
like a sexual excitement thing, that it just felt more normal. And that sexual excitement came from the fact that I actually felt sexier when I was wearing the clothes that identified with my gender. So, like,
Yeah.
there's a slight differentiation there about like, I wasn't turned on by the fact that I was wearing women's clothes. I was turned on because I thought I looked better
Mhm.
and I was feeling sexier in those
Mhm.
things. But the idea of wearing women's clothing itself didn't necessarily turn me on. Like the situation of wearing women's clothing, like
Mhm.
it being naughty or taboo or something didn't turn me on. It wasn't like, a thing of like, anything related to that. And so like, as I started researching and people were like, yeah, that's how I like, seeing other people identifying the same way helped me a lot of being like, oh, and there's also, I think, this older thought process that I also saw people and, old therapists that like are from a different generation necessarily, where they would think to themselves like, well, if you're turned on at all by dressing up like a woman, then that is a fetish and it's just cross dressing,
Mm. Mm.
And I don't think for me personally, I don't like that method. I don't think that's a valid. I think that was a methodology used to invalidate a lot of trans people's experiences.
Mhm.
Um, and
I also take issue with just cross-dressing. It's
yes,
just cross-dressing. It's just like,
that too. I think I had a lot of gatekeeping and I first started transitioning to
what's that
try and
mean?
actually transition. So gatekeeping is just like a thing where like I had to go through a lot of hoops in order to start medical transition and sort of take
Mhm.
hormones and do stuff. Nowadays, it's generally a lot easier for people. Like you can go to Planned Parenthood, you could do informed consent, which is where you sign some forms and just, you can do what you want. But
Yeah.
where I was getting treated, I had to go through things like get therapist notes, I had to get doctor's notes, I had to do all of this stuff just to start medical transition, just to get hormones and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And um you know, granted, there were a lot of things too for me because I had other medical issues, so doctors were very
Right,
afraid,
right.
but also cis women suffer with the same medical issues I do, so I don't understand why they.
Mm. Of
It's
course, of course. So then
a whole
wait,
thing.
what's gatekeeping?
So gatekeeping is just like essentially where, and I'm lucky that I didn't have to go through this, but at the time there were a lot where a therapist will essentially try and
Oh, I see.
they'll gatekeep stuff from you and they'll try and
Got it.
explain your stuff with other things that they have, whether it be a Christian therapist that's trying to be like, no, you're not trans, you're this, or if it's just an older therapist who subscribes to an older version of the
Got
DSM that
it.
has older definitions of things and whatnot. They kind of use those things because like at this time, it was like
I understand.
2010 stuff, there was like new versions of the DSM coming out with lots of new diagnoses and stuff on gender identity and gender dysphoria and stuff. And a lot of older therapists hadn't kind of switched to those things. And so
Yeah.
whether it be on purpose or you know, on accident, there are lots of stories that I read when, thinking about transitioning online about people who were saying like, I had to go through lots of different therapists because they wouldn't write me the note or, oh, they told me I just had autogynephilia or something, which is the like sexual attraction to wearing women's clothes and things like that, and it's just
Mhm.
like because I told them that I got turned on once when I wore women's clothes, and it's just
Hmm.
like, that's kind of the
Yeah.
gatekeepy way, and
Got
so
it.
like
I
for me,
understand.
I was lucky enough that my therapist that I was working with at the time was younger, she was really great, and she just wrote me the notes basically, was like, "Yeah, here you go. Like you're
Ah,
trans, like you want this, like here you go."
yeah.
It was for me, it was mainly doctors that were preventing me from getting these things because of all my other they were like, "Oh, you have
Right.
Ehlers-Danlos," and I was like, "So do lots of women. I just give me the
Yeah.
pills, god damn it. Just give
Yeah,
me the hormones."
totally. But
So like,
I'm
yeah.
really hearing like a lot of clarity in your system of like from
Yeah.
a young age of just like this doesn't feel good. What's happening doesn't feel good. Maybe there's a world that feels better, that
Yeah.
like something is off. And I wanted you specifically to go through all of that cuz again like a lot of folks, a lot of cross dressers. In fact, I'm talking I have a new client who's in their 70s and
Mhm.
can say to me point blank, I do not like being a man. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
feel good. But then in the next breath will also be like, but I don't know if I'm not trans. Like I can't and because of the fear, the actual fear of what it would mean for his life to embrace the fullness of who he is because he's never
Yeah.
done that before. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so it's
Totally.
like, so there's, and my question is like, do you think you could have survived as in the male gender? Like, do you
No,
think you
I'd be
could
dead
have?
right now. Straight up. I'd be
Yeah,
dead. I would have killed myself. I don't want to be crass about that, but I would have probably have ended my own life at that point. And I mean, a lot of trans youth end up trying to commit suicide or end up committing suicide. It's not an uncommon thing because we know what happens when people are denied gender care and they are
yeah,
forced to live this way. And especially when you know that it's possible to fix. That's crazy. That's more a commentary on what's going on right now. Um, But as for, there was a while where I did kind of feel like, well, and I don't want to. This is very much my experience. I do not want to say all cross-dressers go this, because I think there is kind of an explanation of like, oh, well, all cross-dressers are just trans people. They just don't want to admit it, or that they're just, their quote unquote egg is unbroken, which is in trans community, when your egg is broken, that means that's when you realize you're trans.
Oh, I didn't know that. I was like, what are you talking
Yes. So they're just like, oh, all people who cross dress are just they just haven't broke their egg yet and stuff. And I don't think that's true. I think that there can be people who just like cross dressing, who are comfortable
Absolutely.
in their
In both
gender
genders.
assigned at birth and just like fucking around with gender, or they like just playing, whatever
Or
the
brings
case may
out
be.
other parts of themselves that don't get to be seen in their masculine.
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I think there is probably a subset of people who enter into cross-dressing because it feels like a safer space to express themselves, and end up finding out that, oh, actually, I
Yeah.
really like this and this feels more natural. And like, you're right, like, feeling like I don't like being a guy. And I think that the one question that people always ask is like, you know, when I'm sitting there and someone's like, oh, if you had a button that could push and you could just be a cis woman right now, and I'm like, yeah, I'd push it immediately. Without hesitation. If you could say that, you're probably trans, for one. Like, a lot of people are just like, in theory, if I had a button, of course I would just do it and it would be easy. And it's like, and then they go back to, but in reality, that's not how it works. And it's like, I'm so sorry to say that, but you are, like, anyone who says that they would push the button if given the chance is trans.
Mm.
You're like, yeah, I guess I know it's a theoretical thing, but like, that's a big hint. And then also,
It's a
like,
big hint.
cis people don't think about gender this much. Trans people think about gender so much,
Yes.
and cis people don't question their gender like at all, I've learned, which is crazy to me, because I grew up thinking about like, well, am I a boy or girl at that? And to learn that my fellow peers didn't think about that literally at all was insane for me to realize. And that made
Yeah.
me definitely realize like, oh yeah, I'm trans, because like no one thinks about it this much, because like
Yeah.
I spent so much time worrying if I was or not, that I was like, that might be the sign that I am, because cis people don't worry about this shit that much. They
Yeah.
just kind of feel congruent with their gender, and they don't feel the need to question it too much.
Yeah. Which actually brings me to a great point of, well, first of all, can we just, I also need to take a breath, because sometimes you say things like, audience, please understand how much I am attached to this beautiful submissive girl of mine. So, like, I've collared her, like she's mine, right? I am her mistress. Sometimes you say things that are like so harrowing of like what your experience was, that it like catches me off guard, as if like I just learned, that like my teenage daughter, like had something terrible happen to her. You know what I mean? I'm just like, so when you say, "Oh, I would have killed myself by now," I I am on the verge of tears over here.
I'm sorry
Because
to be so like upfront with that fact.
girl, babe, you obviously know that that's not the issue. There's no issue here. The issue here is
Mhm.
I want people who are listening I want them to feel empathy with how I'm feeling empathy with you, because I love you so
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
Um,
I,
and
I mean,
also because you're
I
doing so well these days that sometimes even
mm,
I really forget the felt sensation of where you came from.
yeah, it's definitely. I say it with a lot of levity now. I mean, there were times that I have, I mean, with
Yeah.
depression and anxiety and lots of things, there have been really low times where, you know, thinking about that has been an option. And, that was especially also, yeah, before I came out. And there is a feeling of like, you know, because honestly, since I've come out, I haven't had any ideations. I haven't had any attempts and stuff, which
Mhm.
is interesting to me that since I came out publicly, I have not had any,
Mhm.
you know, anything that's been
Yeah.
a scare or anything, and
Mhm.
it's just like a thing of like, I was at a point where, yeah, it's felt almost easier to just die than to be who I really was at certain
Yeah.
points, It felt, which is such a scary place to be in.
I
It's,
can't imagine.
and so like, yeah, if I wasn't able to transition, and if I didn't actually pursue this to myself, you know, it wouldn't have been good,
Yeah.
expressing my gender this way and being out publicly has saved my life in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And, more so than almost the other things that have saved my life, like surgery for my lung and,
Yeah.
being in eating disorder treatment, which saved my life physically. But, I think that, living my life as a cis man would have been very
Mm-mm.
depressing and very hard for me.
Yeah.
And it's just, yeah, I
Wasn't
am
an
so much
option.
happier today than I
Yeah.
am, ever before.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you for sharing that. I also like the thing that you were saying before I stopped us to tell
no
everyone that I
worries.
was about to cry. Um, was I think what you're saying also is a great example of how cross dressers are under the trans. This is a new understanding that I got from you is that how cross dressers can live under the trans umbrella
Yeah.
because like a lot of cross dressers think about gender all the time.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean? Like they're like, where am I? What does it feel good? Am I this? Am I that? Where do I want to
Yeah.
live? And I think like that experience doesn't get acknowledged as that experience doesn't get acknowledged at all in like any kind of queer communities or any and very rarely also like fetish communities or kink communities. This
Mhm.
is why I'm kind of obsessed with cross-dressing is because it is this experience that I would say probably like 10 to 15% of all male identified people have. But
Yeah.
then it doesn't have any place to live in a larger community. So when you explained
Yeah.
it to me, it's just like, "Oh, that's so interesting."
Yeah. I mean, I think that for me personally, I think when you start fucking with gender, that kinda puts you under the trans umbrella somewhere. I mean, we have so many
Somewhere.
labels I mean, that's the thing, it's the umbrella. It's not
Yeah.
saying that you're under a specific group of things. It's just saying that, this is kind of the umbrella is people who kind of fuck with gender, whether that be through transition, whether that be through drag, whether that be through, lots of different ways that we as a society have deemed kind of taboo ways of expressing gender. And,
Mhm.
you know, I think that not every crossdresser is probably going to feel identified with the trans label, and that's completely fine because it's your
Yeah.
story. You get to define how you identify and you feel.
Amen.
That's the beauty of it. But like, I also think that, yeah, realizing that, and I don't want to say that, oh, well, you're thinking about your gender a lot, so that means you're definitely trans. It
Right.
might mean you're under the trans umbrella. I don't want to say that
Mhm.
it means you're transgender or, that you're specific, whatever, because I think there are guys who, yeah, like to express you know, maybe in a sexual context or not in a sexual context, in a kink context, they want to express themselves in a more feminine way
Yeah.
and cross dress and stuff. And it's not about transition for them. It's more of a drag performance or not even a drag performance. It's just more of a
A
expression of a
personal
part of
experience.
themselves.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean,
exactly.
trans literally means to cross. Like it means cross,
Exactly.
so
Yes.
it's
I
like,
mean, when we
what?
look at Latin roots, yes. I
Yeah.
mean, that's why it's funny when bigots are just like they see trans in front of any word and they're like, "Oh, that's woke." And it's like, "No, it literally means cross." Like it's a Latin prefix or guys, come on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So like,
So
yeah, it's
mhm.
definitely I think it's really important to yeah, the other nice thing about the trans umbrella is that you can jump from one part of it to the other. You can, and also there's no shame in being like, oh, maybe I am transgender, exploring it more. Maybe you're not. Maybe you are just end up cross dressing and stuff. Like, I think there's a lot of shame about trying to do something and being like, well, it might not be for me, so I'm not going to try it at all.
Yeah.
And that is something I've had to learn to try and overcome that urge because, like,
Mm.
I've learned that, like, it is worth it to do it sometimes. It's so scary. The buildup is so insanely scary, but it's almost always worth it in the end, And so, like, even if if it's not for you, you end up knowing that you know something new about yourself. And, just like how other people should know things about you to pleasure you, you should also know things about yourself to pleasure yourself. So, like, yeah, I think, if you're feeling on the cross-dressing spectrum and you're just like, oh, I wonder what it feels like to dress, feminine more full time and things like that. The only way you're going to know is to try it. And that feels really scary. And that building the safe space for that is really, really important. But, you know, you got to
Look
make it
at my
happen.
girl. Look at my girl speaking wisdom over here. She's just
Oh,
dropping
gosh, mistress. Oh,
wisdom
gosh.
bombs here and there. Pff, you get a bomb. Pff, you get a bomb.
I've
I
lived
love
my
it.
life in so much shame and
Mm,
building shame resilience, which has been also a part of this process with you,
mm,
has been crucial, I think, because without
mm,
shame resilience, I would not be able to be in the place that I am today. And I think I built a lot of the shame resilience I had about my body working with you. That's why it took me
mm,
so long, because I had so much shame in my body
mm.
from being trans, from hating it, from being broken, from the Ehlers-Danlos stuff, from my lung
Yeah.
stuff, having chronic pain, like, learning to not feel shame about those things and to celebrate them and try it. And it's still really hard for me. I mean, obviously, like, our current work, like, it's been like, I'm, I'm kind of back in, a place where I'm a little scared feeling touch and stuff, and like, just because of what we're focusing on, and it just feels a little scary, but like going through it
Yep.
is also helping a lot. And there is a lot of shame around, you know, certain parts of my body for me, but working with you has definitely helped to reduce that shame. And that's what I really needed practice with, was not actually like the kink things. It was the shame resilience and having a safe
Hmm.
place to practice that. And the less shame I feel about my body, the better I'm able to enjoy my body and let other people enjoy it. So
Hell
it's
yeah.
just like, shame resilience. And I think that gender stuff just comes with so much shame built in
Hmm.
that it's just, and I think a lot of cross dressers probably would say that they do feel a lot of shame around
Yeah.
their stuff. And a fun thing for me has been trying to turn that shame into fun shame.
Yes. Tell me about that. Well, first, I want to know what, that is really interesting, the fun shame of it.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Yeah, tell me about what does
I
fun shame
mean,
mean to you?
it's kind of something that we like. I'd like to explore with you, and maybe this is just new for you, but new in telling you this. But like, I don't want to feel shame around my gender identity specifically, but I do think that feeling shame around you know, dressing up really girly or something like this.
Uh-huh.
I think that sometimes I feel a little shame around that, and I
Uh-huh.
think there could be a fun little humiliation play around it too. About I
You look
remember
like
when we were at
such a
the
trashy slut kind of a
Yes,
thing?
basically. Yeah, kind of. I mean, I remember that when we were at the dungeon, you were like, when you were like, we could have like a scene. You were talking about like a scene where you know, I would be more kind of objectified in a way, and there would be kind of like humiliation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so like introducing this thing about like, oh, I feel shame because I'm dressed kind of slutty, and then turning that into a kind of a scene is a fun
Yeah.
thing to kind of recapture that. And so you can't do it just right off the bat, obviously, because there's a lot of work that goes into it. But like, it is a place where I'm like, oh, I do feel a lot of shame about being very overtly feminine for some reason. But what if I can include that in a scene and like.
Because it's like your shame is like, am I passing? And is this working? And then the shame we're giving you is just like, ew, it's working so much. Now you're just like a trashy
Yeah.
slut. Now you're like, everyone can see your butt. You gross
Yeah. I
hoe.
mean, everyone, yeah, it's like, it's just really crazy because I mean, like, it's just such a different way to view myself and my femininity than how I used to.
Yeah.
And, I don't want to say that that I'm like okay with being humiliated, because like a thing that's still off limits for me is like, I don't want the fact that I am a trans woman to be questioned or humiliated.
Yeah.
Like, which is a fine line. I get it, because like there's a fine line of not wanting to be humiliated about that. But I do want to be humiliated necessarily about like, oh, the outfit that I'm wearing,
Being a
or,
cis
the choices
woman.
that I'm making. Yes,
It's like being humiliated as a cis woman.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly, and feeling the shame, and for me, though, the shame is kind of coming from a slightly different place, but, like, we're dealing with it the same way that we would, whether it's trans or cis, and by
Yeah.
capturing it and doing things with it, and I think that's been a really powerful part of our work too. It's just, like, taking things that have traditionally been scary or bad, and kind of changing them and flipping them. Like, for me, pain has been a really big part of my life in terms of the
Yeah.
Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and whatnot. And so recontextualizing those things and being like, okay, well, actually, I loved impact play because I'm choosing to indulge in that pain and I'm choosing to
Yes.
get this. And like, it's kind of the same thing with, dressing up super femme. It's like, no, I'm doing this. I want to be a slut. I want to be I want to be these things. And so like, it ends up taking a lot of power back too, because you don't feel like these labels are being pushed on you. You're like, I'm choosing this, I'm very much choosing
Yes.
this right now.
I
And
love it.
it's just kind of fun. So like,
Oh, it's
yeah,
so fun.
I'm very much, it's very fun to kind of take the shame and turn it around and be like, something that brought me a lot of shame before, um, now can be a fun thing and stuff. And it's like, yeah, I don't want anyone off the street to be saying these things to me. That would be abuse. That would
Right.
not be good. But like,
Right.
yeah, when I'm in a kink scene and I'm with a partner that I
And you've negotiated.
and I've negotiated, yeah, call me a slut.
Okay,
But yeah,
slut. So
so
let
yeah,
me ask you, what do you think? Because there was like a definite shift. We worked together for a year, and then you took a year off,
yeah,
because you lost your job and had to get a bunch of surgeries and whatnot, and then you came back and you were you were you were in a different place when you came back, and I'm just curious because then our work started to take a very different tone. And I
yeah,
remember one of the things was also like right before you ended, I said to you, I think we should go into dynamic all the time. I think we actually should
yes.
be in full dynamic and not like almost lifestyle dynamic and
Mhm.
not ever because beforehand we would go into dynamic only for certain scenes and then we'd pop
Yeah,
out and then
yeah,
I'd kind of go back in a therapist role. But
yeah,
before we ended, I was like, that's enough. Like, I'm taking control here because like
yeah,
you keep spiraling and I'm annoyed with it. So I'm taking the reins. But then you had to quit because of all these unfortunate
yes,
things happened.
yeah.
And tell me your experience with that and cuz I'm curious what was the thing that actually made like was there a thing that made a difference and was it that?
So, that was a thing. When I heard that, I got excited because I was like, "Okay, yes, that is something I want." Like, that is something that I know I would like. And also, like, I am a person too that, like, I think I I work best with therapists that kind of take a more heavier hand. Like, my talk therapist is amazing, and I love her so much, but she's not afraid to call me out on bullshit that
Mhm.
I do. And I
Mhm.
need someone that's gonna be able to do that because, like, I respond well to that kind of, work and stuff like that,
You need a
And
little
so,
spice
like,
because the voices in your brain are so fucking spicy.
yes, and so,
Yeah.
like, I was like, well, entering into a dynamic is basically like, of course, you're gonna call me out and shit because that's the dynamic. That's, the kind of thing we're
Mhm.
entering into. So it was very exciting to kind of be like, okay, that's something I wanna do. Um, I think though that there were a couple other things during the course of that year of unemployment, which was that, I was very burned out from work
Mhm.
and I had really thrown a lot of my energy into my job when I was working
Mhm.
with you and for many years before that. And not having a job kind of, well, was detox at first, but after I kind of detoxed from that, like, it made me realize that, like, wow, there are other values that I maybe want to pursue here. And
Hmm.
connection came up again and again during that year of unemployment of being like, yeah, I really want this. And I also started working with the Eating Disorder Foundation that I was
Mhm.
doing, that I was a patient at. And I was starting to talk about my story and share my eating disorder story specifically with patients and with families and friends of patients and stuff. And when I started sharing that part of my story with people, I realized that oh, people can actually value me in a way, like it was,
Yeah.
and not that you know, I, not that that should be the only way they value me, but like it was a way that I could feel valued at first, and I was like, oh, by putting myself out there and by not having the shame about sharing my story and about being, shame about having an eating disorder, look at the connection I'm already building. And
Mhm.
so when I finally got work again and I got a job and everything, I came back and I was already in the flow of working.
Yeah.
I had recovered from burnout at work. I was kind of like not re-inspired to work again because I don't want to ever get back to where I was working. I want to,
Mhm.
my work-life balance needs to be better. But like, I, yeah, I was just like, I want this to work. I want, I, at a certain point, I I don't know, I just kinda came back and was just like, "I need to do this," and when I came back, we entered into the
Yeah, we
dynamic.
went straight into a dynamic.
Yeah, we went right back into the dynamic, and, like, I it was very it was good, for me. I enjoyed that part. It was, something I enjoyed doing and working, with you on that, and so, like, it definitely confirmed for me that, this is where I want to be. And like the changes that have happened in just the last 6 months, again, of us working together, um, have been, very magical. And I think that's definitely because of all the work I did previously. I mean,
Yes.
I couldn't have just come in and, as
No.
we were mentioning, like when I first came and saw Mistress Emily here, like I was crying when she touched me. And part of it was because of like neurodivergent sensitivities to touch. And other parts of it
Mhm.
was I didn't feel deserving of touch. And like there were
Mhm.
so many different issues at play that it took me a long time. But once I finally got to this point, I was like, you know what? I've been waiting for so long here. I got to take advantage of these things while I'm here. And like, also, entering into the dynamic, there's a dynamic, you are mistress, I am girl. And so when you are like, go to play events, go to these things,
Yeah,
I have, I don't,
you have to.
I
You don't
have
have a
to.
choice.
And I also, it's like when I feel embarrassed about something, I have to remember that's not my embarrassment. That's your embarrassment.
Yep. Yep. You
Or your
don't own
pleasure
that
for my
embarrass.
embarrassment. I don't own the
Absolutely.
embarrassment. And it just kind of it. I would say that there is definitely a part of me that very much enjoys that part of it of like, well, I don't have a choice.
You don't. You really don't have a choice.
So like, yeah, or if I don't do something, or like if I need to do something like restyle, hair, do makeup or something like that, you're very much like, you're very straight with me because like you're like, well, you're eye candy for me, so I want you to look good. And I'm like,
Mhm.
of course I'll make these changes. Like, but if like anyone else was like, your makeup is weird, I'd be like, okay, let me go cry a bunch right now because I tried really hard at this and actually that is devastating. But for some reason when you say it, it's just like, you're right. I need to look prettier. I could do this. I could do it. I could do it. I could be prettier. So like
Right.
it's a really fun way of increasing and just kind of continuing. I very much like doing things for other people, so that plays into
Yeah.
helping me a lot, to
Yeah, and there was also a lot of
achieve.
incentive for you because you're like, I wonder you asked if you could be collared. I was like, "Do you think this is a possibility that we could have?" And I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
"Oh, yes, if you jump through these 10 hoops
Yes,
that
you
are
did
gonna
make me jump.
terrify you."
Yeah.
And tell the audience, what did you have to do to get the esteemed, rare honor of being collared
Honor.
by me, girl?
It is a very rare honor. I feel it's very exclusive club.
You're literally the only person in it. You're the
I
only
know,
person
which
I've
is
ever
fun.
collared.
Which is fun because,
It is fun.
I just means that we get to explore this together.
It's true.
But so you told me that I needed to, one, you gave me a series of tasks that I had to do. So I helped you with those tasks and everything like that, most of them
Mhm.
computer things since I am a programmer.
Mhm.
Then you also made me go to events. You said that I had to go to at least 3 events,
Mhm.
in order to get collared. And so I started going to there's a local dungeon here. They have a femdemonium night, which is
Mhm.
for femdoms. And so I started going to that.
And
Um,
tell the audience why that was such a big deal for you, girl.
well, it was a big deal because I up until this point, my exposure to the kink community was rather limited.
Mhm.
I wasn't going to events and parties and things like that. I was, you know, just kind of working with Mistress Emily here. And so I had gone to a couple events at like the dungeon a long time ago, but nothing recently. And so like I yeah, I mean, it was very new for me, and I didn't know anyone there either. I just kinda
No, you
I went
did.
with I
Yeah,
did, yes. The first time I did, yes.
so my scheme, and this has been happening more and more, which just makes me infinitely happy and euphoric, is that I got a previous client of mine who goes to the dungeon a lot to host girl for her very first time there. When I can
Mhm.
because I have, I'm accruing slowly but surely. I'm accruing this little army of people who have escaped my clutches and are now like better in their life for it. Um, that that are really devoted to this work, and so getting them to support each other is just my most favorite thing in the whole world.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so
yeah. It was
Thomas
really Oh, sorry,
Thomas, who
go
was
on.
actually on the podcast previously,
Oh, right,
um,
yes.
yeah, he was able to host you for the very first time, and
Yes, he did.
it was a big deal.
I was terrified. I was just like, I it was scary, because
Yeah.
at this event, there is a thing called the Parade of Possibilities where all of the subs that want to participate, one by one, go in front of all of the doms. And they literally just say like name, pronouns, they give a little spiel about themselves,
Like, what they
and
desire for the night, how they wanna
what they
play.
desire. Yes. And so I did this because I knew that
'Cause I told you to. It
you
was
were
part of
like
your
you gave me
requirement.
instructions
I
on
gave you
like
even a card to read. I was like, "You better read this."
yes, and I can say that I said almost everything. I didn't say everything that you had in the card because as soon as I got out there in front of all of the doms, I basically like lost consciousness. I don't remember. I was just like, "Oh my god, there's so many pretty ladies here that that could do things to me." And so I was just like, "Oh my gosh." And I got really intimidated. I blurted some things out and then went back and
You did say, I think I wanted you to say, like, "And
mhm.
if you touch me behind my ear, I'll, like, moan for you like a dirty little slut."
Yes, and I said something about touching my ear, and I think I forgot to say the dirty little slut, but
Yeah, conveniently.
the second time I went, I did say that.
Yeah.
And I did go through and I was like, if you touch me on my ear, I'll moan like a little slut." And so she's just like, and like
Mwah, ah.
I also like, it's kind of crazy. Here's another hot tip, which is going to surprise everyone. If you ask to be played with, you might be played with. Because like the times that I've done the femdom, the parade of possibilities, and I just went out there, I'm like, I want marks, people, mark me up. Hit me good. And yeah, I got some people that were interested in doing that. So it turns
Yeah.
out when you say what you want, people are very interested in doing it. I know it's very
It's
crazy.
wild.
It's a hot tip that you probably never heard of before. But yeah, when you just go out there and be like, people actually like, it's so, it takes a lot of, because there's a lot of shame in being like, I want to be beat up. I want to be hit. I want to be, I want to
Whatever.
engage in edge
Insert
play, whatever. Like
kink
there's
here.
lots of, like, I know that people in the cross-dressing community, it can be very scary to come to other people and say they're cross-dressers.
Mm.
Um, but then when the kink community, there's like so many other sub-communities you can be a part of that it's not just you have to do it once, you have to do it repeatedly, and especially for kinks that are more taboo, it could be scary, to like
Yeah.
tell in front of a bunch of people. But like when you do, there's going to be that person that's like, oh, fuck, that's what I'm into. And like,
Mm-hmm.
that's right up my alley because, yeah, the people I've noticed who are very direct in saying what they want in the parade end up getting what they want. And the
What
people
they
who are just
want.
like, oh, I'm kind of here just to explore, it's less because like it's, yeah. So anyways,
I
speaking.
remember also, like, after you came, we had a session after your first night at the dungeon, and you're like,
Mhm.
"I don't know that if all the people wanna play with me, like, only a couple people wanted to play with me, and what about" and I just remember I remember, like, "Bitch, not everyone likes peanut butter.
I
People
know
are
this.
not allowed to like peanut butter. Some people
I
like
know.
chocolate. You do
Yeah.
not have to be both peanut butter and chocolate. You're peanut butter. Fuck
I,
off. You're peanut butter. Stop crying and go be peanut butter."
yes. I mean, yeah, I definitely,
That
yes, I definitely,
by the way, people, that is literally how I talk to my clients. This is why I'm
yeah,
not a certified or licensed therapist. Because
I
I need
mean,
to be able to swear at my clients and hit them
that's
if I want to.
fine. Yeah, I know what I'm getting into here.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And like I said, I respond well to those things. So that
Mhm.
we'll use them to my advantage here. But I definitely like it took me a while to get through my mind because like it
Yeah.
is a very I do suffer from a lot of black and white thinking and all or nothing thinking. And I have a problem seeing the shades of gray in between those things.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a thing of like, well, because no one wanted to do this time, no one wants to, and it's
Mhm.
like the more events that I've gone to, the more people want to play with me too. So like if you do go to an
Yeah.
event and it's like no one plays with you for the first time, it doesn't mean that no one wants to play with you ever. A lot of the times I think DOMs are just kind of as nervous to meet people. And so they kind of tend to the people they know they've met before at the dungeon. You see a lot of pre planned scenes and stuff. So, like, it can be really scary. And, I have lucked out because I just keep putting myself in, positions. Like when I started working with Molly, that was definitely a like thing of like, she was just like, oh, does someone want to get electrocuted? And I was like, I do. I do.
And this
And,
is a girl's
you
play
know,
partner. And
yes.
she because now you live a life where you have a play partner.
Now
You
it's kind of
just
crazy because I went to the dungeon with you and she was there and you guys both did a scene with me together. And I went from months ago just fantasizing that two amazing, beautiful dominatrix ladies would be doing things to me. And there it was right
there
then,
it
and
was.
I was just like, oh my God, what is my life? Like, because it's so crazy. I don't even recognize it sometimes because I'm just like, that is not me. But like, it is
It is
me
you.
now,
It is you.
like,
I love it.
and
I
yeah.
love telling people about your story because so many people, and we're going to start wrapping up soon, but because so many people come to me and they're just like, "No, I've been to so much therapy. I'm never going to heal. I'm just destined to be like this forever. Like, I just don't." And I'm like, "I will smack you shitless. This is ridiculous. Come here. Sit at
Hmm.
my feet. Let's fucking go." Cause it's like, if girl can
Yeah.
do it, anyone can do it. Like,
I
from what you
assure
have
you.
overcome,
Yeah.
like, I just do not believe that I just do not believe that people are healing resistant. It's just
No, I think you just have to be one, open to it, and willing to do the hard things because The process is hard. I don't want to lie to people and be like, it's all roses over here. It's a very hard process, and you might be thinking like, oh, I want to be collared initially. I want to be doing this, but like, there's so much work that I had to do before I was even emotionally available to get to this part. What did you say, mistress? It was that you used to not be able to pour into me. Oh, I forget how you phrased that,
Yeah,
but like,
I mean, yeah, you were like a black hole, so you poured love into you and it kind of
mhm,
evaporated
yeah,
because you didn't have any love for yourself to catch the love.
yeah,
And now what's so beautiful is that what I love so much and what you're again, you're my very first collared submissive, right? And what I have learned from working from you is like the true depth of what it feels like to have like the continual loop of pouring into you. I pour into you, you pour into me. And I think this is what a lot of people don't understand around hierarchies when they work is that the idea is called a power exchange, but people think that it's like the submissive is giving over the power. And
hmm
it's like actually no, you have to think of it more as like an equilibrium
hmm
because I am nourished from you just as much as you are nourished from me. And if it's not that equal pouring into, then it doesn't work. And there's resentment and it gets shady. It's gotta be equally as pleasurable for both parties, otherwise, what are we doing here?
yeah, and I think that like you have poured a lot into me, and there's a power exchange. Like there is the power
For
exchange,
sure.
but the power that I've given away, I've replaced with other kinds of power, which is very interesting. The power to pursue what I want to do and to be confident and being like, yeah, I want this kind of play. And like, it's crazy because, yes, the power that I gave away does not mean that I have less power. I still have the same amount of power. It's just that not in our dynamic, it's different. But when
It's
in my
almost
other,
like you've
it's just like,
unlocked. It's like
yes,
unlocked different facets of power for you in other life that
yeah,
you couldn't actually
yes,
reach beforehand. It's like this
yes,
concept of containment. It's like only
hmm
when it's like when you're squished or when you're hugged really tight, only when you get that feeling of like I'm safe, can your
yeah,
body actually start to move things creatively or
hmm
emotions or whatever you want. But you actually need that containment squishing of an outside force
yeah.
so that we can put your feet on the ground and come back to safety.
Definitely. And I mean,
Yeah.
it's been really fun to explore that and also to explore the power that I have now over my own body and over my
Mm.
own, experience.
Maybe like with your own body.
Yes, let's say that with my own body.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I like that because there's power over, there's power under, and there's power with. And I
Yeah.
think what you experience is power now with your body, which
Yeah.
I love.
It was
Yeah, I
like, yeah.
mean, I see, girl, like, this is such a treat to have you on this podcast. Girl, you have to understand, not only do girl and I have our own, like, our sessions where we are still in the dynamic and we like work on touch and we work on different things specifically for her growth, but she also comes over and she comes over to my house, she does computer work, she will clean my vanity because that's on her list of things to do.
Yes. Yes.
Um
I organized your desk like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago.
Yep, and
But yeah, vanity is still there.
when I throw parties, she is our snack girl, and she does all the setup and the clean up, and also, one thing, the last thing I'll say before we close is that I am going to be launching a cross-dressing community coming up. It's gonna start in July, but I'm gonna start launching that soon for people to take a look at. And Girl is going to be the assistant with that. So it's gonna be both. It's gonna be both a virtual component where there's gonna be like This is a cohort for um, 16 to 20 cross dressers from around the world. Come together and to really be with each other in the journey of what it means to like come out and to celebrate and embrace the fullness of you in the gender exploration that you are. And then we're going to be going to retreat in San Francisco, and girls gonna be joining us, and we're gonna get dressed, and we're gonna go out in the town, and it's gonna be fucking fabulous. So
Yes.
one of the reasons also that it's such a pleasure to have Girl on this podcast is because she's going to be joining the Soul Kink community in a much more deeper and intentional way.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
excited to work with you and to support, all the people who choose to take this journey. You know, it's, whether you are trans or not trans, just cross dressing, just exploring, yeah, it'll be a good time to really, I think do a lot of self exploration. And however I can support people on that journey, I'm happy to do.
Yeah, and then I'll actually leave it last comment to you. What advice would you have for anyone who's beginning to explore this gender fuckery as you put it, whether they're in the middle of it, in the beginning of it, or seasoned?
I mean, that's an interesting question.
Mm,
I think really, I think, hmm,
hmm,
I would think that for me, I had to push myself a little bit past where I was comfortable because if I only ever sat where I was comfortable, I wouldn't have made any progress, you know?
mm,
Every step of the gender exploration process was uncomfortable for me.
mm,
Um, and a lot of them, because they're uncomfortable, it makes it feel like it's not worth it. And I think that, it could be scary and people just kind of stop exploring because, they feel a little bit of pushback and scaredness and they stop the exploration. And I think it's really important that you don't let that stop you from the exploration. It's very momentary and it feels like it's going to be forever, but I can assure you it's not.
hmm,
It's just that, it's just new and new things are scary. So, like, just keep on trucking and go through. And yeah, if there's something that you think of that you're like, I want to try that, but it's scary, um, I would say try it. Your brain brought it up for a reason. So,
mm,
give it a try. And, you know, a lot of it is kind of sitting with the uncomfortable parts, but that just means you're exploring yourself. And that's the most important part. So,
beautifully said.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much, girl.
Yeah.
And we're going to end this episode of Soul Kink Therapy. We'll be launching and sharing more information about the cross dressing cohort called Outrageously Her very soon. In the meantime, continue on, my beautiful gender expansive freaks. All right. Bye bye.